everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Neuro-Inclusive Dog Pod, the podcast where we bridge the gap between neurodivergence and the dog world. So, today I have got a really exciting guest to speak to, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves as usual. So, hello, Sarah, welcome to the podcast. Could you tell everybody who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I just want to apologize in advance. We have a storm here at the moment, so if you hear the wind battering my house, that's what it is, basically.
No problem.
So my name's Sarah. I live in Wexford in Southeast Ireland. I'm currently pursuing a dog training course at Creedon's College, which is in Cork, here in Ireland. And I've also recently finished a pet loss grief counselling certificate, which I did through the British College of Canine Studies.
Mhm.
Um, Before that, I worked in radio for 4 years and podcast production as well as a freelancer. And then I also spent some time in the UK training in sound engineering for theatre. But everything pretty much changed when I got my autism diagnosis earlier this year. And then a couple of months after that, I also lost my rescue dog, Archie, very suddenly, which just sort of led me to reevaluate everything. And that is when I decided to pivot into working with dogs.
Amazing, amazing. I like hearing everybody's stories on the podcast because like for me as well, for those who've listened to a podcast before, it's dogs started everything, dogs were like the reason that all of this has come to light. And I just love the way that they just take us down this path, this career path, the things that we wouldn't actually choose to do. And it's just like, just
Mm.
because this one dog comes into our lives, it just completely change everything. And it's amazing how that happens, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Amazing. So you've spoken before, and I know we've spoken on our pre-podcast chat about being undiagnosed autistic during your earlier career. How did you find that in terms of how being unknowingly neurodivergent, did that shape your work at all, and did it change the way that you showed up in your industry? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was very challenging for me because, I'm sure so many people can relate to this when you're late diagnosed. For so much of my life, I felt different from other people and I didn't know why.
Yeah.
I thought there was something wrong with me for a long time. And you sort of internalize these words about yourself like weird or,
Mm.
th things that people say, they're just not very nice.
Yeah.
So I studied multimedia at university. Then I did a master's in radio production, which I loved. Like it's still one of the best things I ever did. I had a great time.
Mm.
Um, and I always did well academically, but I struggled to kind of translate that success into the world of work.
Mhm.
Like I've always massively struggled with job interviews. Um, I always felt misunderstood and like my body language and my whole way of communicating was just being judged rather than whether or not I could actually do the job,
Yeah.
which is very, very stressful.
Yeah.
And so I got my first radio job via an internship. So I didn't actually have to interview for it, which has kind of been a pattern with the work that I've done. I've somehow
Mhm.
managed to like avoid the interview process when I've gotten into a job.
Yeah.
Um, and then I later went freelance during the pandemic. And during that whole time, like I still kind of am, but I'm unlearning it now slowly. I was a chronic people pleaser. I had no boundaries. I couldn't say no to anything. So as a result of that, I experienced burnout many, many times without ever realizing what it was.
Mhm.
Like I used to get when I was at school, I used to get sensory overload. Again, no idea what it was. I thought it was just me getting sick a lot. I thought I was
Mhm.
always sick. Um, so yeah, that sort of followed me into work. And then in the radio industry, there's this massive pressure to be able to adapt very quickly to like changing situations and multitask because live radio is quite manic in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And that was uncomfortable because you feel like I felt like I was lying to everyone all the time by saying, "Oh yeah, I thrive in these fast-paced environments." And I would think in the back of my mind, "Well, do I? I'm not
Yeah.
so sure I do, but I can't say that because I have to appear as if I do."
Yeah.
So it's not that I wasn't suited to that kind of career because I also had a lot of strengths that came in very useful, but it was a lot of pressure and it was a lot for my brain to cope with.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and quite a few things that I've picked up on that I resonate with, and it's that, like you say, it's that always feeling weird. So for me, I had a late diagnosis at the age of 40, 41, I think, 42. I can't remember how old I am. That's terrible, my neurodivergent brain. But a couple of years ago, anyway, and like things just start to click and make sense, don't they? And for
Mm.
me, like say, you spend a lot of your life just thinking that you're a little bit weird and that you're the odd one out. And I always remember saying to people, "Oh, it's okay. I'm just a little bit weird with food, or I'm just a little bit weird, or And I always used to use that as a descriptor of myself. So, and I think it's that kind of like safety net that you put out that if I say that I'm weird, then they're not going to think that I'm weird, or they'll think, do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
kind of protecting yourself, but you don't know why you feel that way. You just know that you're different to other people, and it's sad in a way. And I think a lot of all this talk in the media now about neurodivergence, both the good and the bad of it, I
Mm.
think it's sad that it's taken a lot of women and people in general till later in life to think actually this all makes sense now. And sometimes you can feel a little bit, so for me it was like, yes, I got an answer that kind of answered a few questions. But one person said to me, when I got my diagnosis, whatever you do, don't make a rash decision right now, because it's going to take time to process things and make sense. And I was like, well, that's crazy, because I just thought I'd get my diagnosis and that'll be fine, everything will be answered. But it wasn't until like now, 2 years on, that one line that person said to me still making sense, because it's weird how as time evolves, little things just come back to you like from earlier on. Or for me, I'm having a more of a career shift into still, doing this kind of work that I'm doing
Mm.
now rather than the agility side of things. And it's like little things that you're like, oh, hold on a minute, that's because of that. And for a minute, you kind of like have to sit there and kind of make sense of it. But then you get all of these emotions. But like when you get a diagnosis, you're like, oh, you think it's going to be the be all and end all, but it's not. It's like an ongoing process, isn't it? That you just
Yeah.
have to navigate probably for a long time coming. But thankfully, that's one of the reasons why I do what I do now, bringing all this into the dog world, because it's just not spoken about, and not spoken about because of the media. A lot of people have that negative association with it. So I think the more of us that speak about this, and like this is a reality for us, and a lot of our years we've spent masking, pretending to fit in, but that's damaging to our own mental health as well, isn't it? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very, very, very sad, but hopefully these podcasts and stuff will help spread awareness. That's the aim of them anyway. So you mentioned that there you when you was doing a course and you received your autism diagnosis around about the same time. So how did that feel like for you? Did you feel a sense of relief, like I was just speaking about, or was that quite hard to navigate, doing everything at once, navigating this course and just having this diagnosis? How was that for you?
It was really hard, yeah. It was something I was kind of starting to explore, but just as I made the decision to go. So it seemed like a really good idea at the time because my career just wasn't going as well as I'd hoped it would. And I thought, oh, it would be great to just sort kind of branch out into live sound and theatre. Um, and then when I was preparing to make the move, I just became chronically stressed and I couldn't eat properly for weeks and it was just such an ordeal.
Yeah,
Um, and it was only later that I realized that this is always how my body would respond whenever a big life change happened.
yeah,
So I sort of like it confused me because on the one hand, I wanted to do it, but
yeah.
then it was just so difficult to cope with.
Mm,
So I went through this thing where I started Googling like everything I was experiencing, and autism kept coming up in search results. And given my limited understanding of autism at the time, I just thought, oh no, it can't be that, because I was
mm,
still thinking in terms of stereotypes.
yeah.
But then when I started the course, I couldn't keep ignoring it any longer. So I booked in to see my new GP and
Mm,
got referred for an assessment.
mhm,
And like I was so nervous about even saying I think I might be autistic, and I
mm,
hadn't told my family at the time.
yeah,
Um, and a few people did say, "Oh, you're probably just anxious," but
yeah, yeah.
um, And I believed that for a long time as well, but I knew
Mm,
deep down at this point that there had to be a lot more to it.
mhm.
And then I scored really highly on the screening questionnaires that they give you. So I thought, right, this is definitely
Yeah,
I'm definitely going in the right direction here.
yeah,
So I was lucky in that I only had a few months to wait, and I had my assessment in March of this
mhm.
year, and
Yeah,
they diagnosed me there and then. They said they had absolutely no doubt that I was autistic,
yeah,
which it was like all these emotions just hit me all at once because I was I was hoping to hear that, but also I wasn't expecting it at the same
yeah,
time. It's like, oh, someone's just said this out loud. And
yeah,
um I'd had to move accommodation around that time just really unexpectedly. So that was really
yeah,
making me very dysregulated as well. So I was sitting in this studio flat on my own when I
yeah,
had the assessment, no
yeah,
one to talk to afterwards, and I couldn't speak for a good hour afterwards anyway. I just sat there crying, and
mhm.
it was a relief, but it was also like a very isolating experience because I know a lot of people can relate to that thing of, yes, you're autistic, now you're on your own to try and figure out what that
Yeah,
means for you.
yeah,
And in the meantime, trying to get the accommodations that I needed while on the course was a bit of a nightmare.
yeah,
And I just felt very frustrated and exhausted all the time.
yeah,
And that's when I kind of started to question, is this really what I should be doing? It was all
yeah.
just kind of coming at me at once.
Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? And there's a few things that really resonate with not only just me but our family as well, because we have a teenage son that made the transition from secondary school to go to college. And with that transition for him was really, really difficult. And he'd been in, the school structure that had never picked anything up with him. He was just sensitive, or he's a little bit sensitive, or he's got a lot of knowledge in his brain, but just struggles to get it down onto paper. And then looking back now, I'm like, why wasn't any of this picked up for him? But anyway, it wasn't apparent because I didn't know anything about this. My diagnosis came because of an event that I went to just by chance. I won a ticket to it. Then it was for neurodivergent business people basically, and then from then things kind of slotted into place. A few people mentioned it. My daughter went on a mental first aid course at work, and the tutor there was actually late diagnosed neurodivergent. So she said, Mum, look into this. And then I looked into it all, and it kind of snowballed from them. But noticing
Mm.
from our son, just that you talk about that structure and that routine, and when it changed for him, when he made the transition from secondary school to college, it was a massive shift. And like you say, that affected his, what he was eating, how he ate, and it's, I think, unless people have experienced it, or know people who have experienced it, it's kind of difficult, isn't it, to
Mm.
to navigate and to just put the things together, because you think there's something else. And like I say, for many years I was diagnosed, I suppose, as just being anxious. I had severe anxiety. That's why I got a dog
Yeah.
in the first place, to help me leave the house. And although I'm not gone down the medication route, not for any particular reason, just because it's not for me. I've got nothing against it. But I was like, let's get out, let's do exercise. I got a dog to make me go out into the open, because you have to walk them.
Mm.
But then looking back on it now, I'm like, actually, maybe if the doctor had said to me, have you thought about this or have you thought about that? And then when I went to the doctor with my diagnosis, it was kind of, thought I wanted a referral for a diagnosis. He just turned around to me and he went, why do you want a diagnosis? I mean, you've managed 40 years so far being
Yeah.
okay. What is it going to prove? And I'm like, and I felt like I had to justify myself. And I'm like, well, I don't want it for anything. I just want it to make sense for me. And I felt like really deflated when I came out of there. And I was like, that was really, really difficult. Like, I wasn't doing it because I wanted to, claim benefits or anything like that. I just wanted it because I had, again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that for me, it was just about getting answers. I was like, I'm having all of these other things, I'm not anxious all of the time. It didn't make sense. And I was doing all of this research. And like you say, once you finally go down that route and get diagnosed, they kind of like go, oh, yes, you are autistic. And for me, because I have both autism and ADHD, the autism one tells you there and then they're like, okay, see you later. And then the ADHD one, after I got diagnosed with them, unless I was wanting to be medicated, they kind of just went, oh, okay, that's it then. bye. And then you're just left then with all of these answers and all of these questions and trying to make sense of it all. It's crazy, isn't it, really, how it works?
Yeah. And this whole thing as well of, you've managed fine up to now, but it's like, well, I haven't. I've
Yes.
had to push myself to the absolute limit just to survive.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that. And it is. And I think that's another thing that we see, especially in the dog industry. I found it a lot with people who have known me from the agility world, because I've been in agility for about 10, 11 years. And my diagnosis is only very recent, like, a couple of years. And the people now, because I'm talking about my neurodivergence more and doing the work that I do, a lot of people that were friends or I would consider as supportive, the more I've spoken out about it, particularly on my Facebook profile and stuff, the more backlash I've got and the more kind of,
Mm.
well, you're no different to me. I suffer from a bit of that and this, that, and the other. And you're just like, hold on a minute. So for me, navigating those changes in acquaintances or friendships and things, and people that you thought might be supportive are not now supportive. And I think it's like I say, that's what I was meaning when when I was saying when you get your diagnosis, it's not, it kind of is an answer, but it isn't an answer because you're navigating all of these other things that kind of break down as a result of you just being who you are. And I think that's why so many neurodivergent people mask and pretend to fit in, because it's not safe for us to be who we are, because there's always some kind of fallout or some kind of people's reaction that we have to kind of shelter from. Have you found that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I can see people's faces change when I say, "Oh, by the way, I'm autistic." And
Yeah.
it's like they might be perfectly polite in response, but you can see it's jarring and they go, "Oh." And then
Yeah.
it's like there's this discomfort. It's very
Yeah.
hard to kind of to read sometimes, but there's a
Yeah.
definite change in the
Yes.
atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly that. And it wants talking about, like I say, this is why we do what we do on the podcast, just bringing it into a tiny little bit of the dog world, because the dog world seems so behind when it comes to other industries. You go out into like corporate world and stuff, and it's slowly, they're not fantastic, but they're putting things in place. Like my husband's work has different things in place now that you're just not seeing in the dog world and things. And I think not only for people as dog trainers or dog professionals, but for our clients as well. So the main reason that I've found, once all these light bulbs started going off and started to think making sense, I was like, actually, that's why I didn't feel supported in my dog training classes. What happened with me, I never intended to be a dog trainer or agility coach or anything like that. I just took my dog along to do something. But then because I wasn't understanding, for me, for my autism, I need to know the what's and the whys and why we're doing something. And if it's not explained to me in that way, they're like, just do this. And I'm like, right, okay, I did it. I went through the motions, but my brain couldn't understand it. So that's when I then retrained, because I hyper focused and just thought, I know, I'll learn it myself. And, didn't realize I was hyper focusing on my dog and the behavior and all of that, and did loads and loads of qualifications. And it was just me trying to make sense of it because I wanted to learn it the best way for me and my dog. But then, like, looking back now, like, for me, it's not acceptable for people to be going to dog training classes and to be made to feel a certain way. And, or if the information isn't delivered in a way that is suitable for them, they're going home feeling deflated, or, they're learning it themselves when they've paid good money to be taught. So, bringing it back to when you was at college and things, how did you find, we've talked about accommodations very briefly, but could you expand on that in a way that, what would you think would have made it easier for you and made a massive difference for you in terms of your learning if they made more accommodations for your autism and neurodivergence?
Yeah. I don't know how familiar, like if anyone's familiar with how the theater industry works,
Mm-hmm.
you have to do very, very long hours, especially if you're on the tech side of that leading up to technical rehearsals.
Right.
And it was very early on when I started hearing people refer to Tech Week as Hell Week. That's what they call it. And they'd kind of
Okay.
laugh about it. It's like a joke that they have.
Yeah.
But I was really not prepared for just how hard that would be. And even as a student, when you're not in professional theatre, you're just
Mm.
kind of expected to get on with it. And I
Mm.
was told on one occasion to, oh, step out and take breaks whenever you need, but not during tech week. And then it would there'd be a laugh. And it's like, oh, okay,
Terrible.
that's what do I do now? So you just have to push through all the time. And in my case, I wasn't able to plan proper meals for the week because I'd be getting home close to midnight, then
Mm.
up again at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. to do it all again. And that was just, yeah, that just, it didn't seem to bother some people that much, but I was like, I need to know what I'm eating and when over the
Yeah.
course of my week. It's just so important.
Yeah.
So I think more breaks definitely would have made a difference, or, a quiet space to be able to go and decompress because there really wasn't anywhere. I'd have times where I would sit in the control room, and of course,
Mhm.
like everything's plugged in there, and it's just a constant buzz of
Wow.
electricity, and it's, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and things like even just getting warnings in advance if there was going to be like lighting effects,
Mm.
things like strobing, because I would have to just keep walking out when it would start to happen. I wouldn't get an advance warning, despite
Right.
asking several times.
Yeah.
Um, and even, yeah, just asking for things, having to constantly remind people this is
Mm.
an issue for me, rather
Yeah.
than just to have people check in and make sure that I was okay. Like it's such a simple thing, but that would have made such a big difference because I did technically have a support plan in place with
Yeah.
accommodations, but absolutely none of it was ever adhered to. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny there, and that's one of the things that I pick up on, and I felt a lot that why you say about people just asking or checking in with you, because one of the things I find as a neurodivergent person is the fact that I won't ask. It's like if I need accommodations, I'm not very good at putting myself forward because I don't like the confrontation. I don't want the
Yeah.
see the RSD of what if they say no, or what if I'm doing something wrong, and feeling like a pain, and the people pleasing, it goes against all of that with things that we feel as neurodivergent. So I just won't ask. And bringing it to the dog training industry, I think for me, this is it. And this kind of, there's the positive reinforcement that we're a part of, and then you get the aversive side that we want to steer people away from. And what I find is one of the biggest things for me is if we don't accommodate for our neurodivergent dog owners, dog people, agility handlers, whoever it is, dog professionals, we are not giving them the service they need, but they need that information. They need to know how to train their dogs. They want to, they want to do right by their dog. So
Yeah.
if we're not making those accommodations and not making them feel seen, safe, and supported in our classes and things, they still need that information, because if they've got a dog at the end of the lead that's being naughty or not behaving appropriately or whatever. So what they're going to do is they're then going to go home and go onto Google, go onto YouTube, and we don't have control then over what they see on YouTube and what they are
Hmm.
looking at. And it's highly possible with the amount of videos and things out there that they will go down the aversive route, not because they want to, it's because they don't have the knowledge to know that that's not particularly right for them or their dog. It's not a massive debate about all of that, but we want to treat our dogs with kindness and respect and understand that they're sentient beings and all of that. But if we're not putting the accommodations in place for our students, then they're not, half of them aren't going to ask, because neurodivergent people aren't very good at usually speaking up and saying. And if they do, it's like looking at the lines of communication that they can have. Like, is there things in place that enable them to just send a message when they get to when they get home and say, oh, this wasn't comfortable for me, or next time can we do this? Because if we're not open in receiving feedback or tweaking things, they're just going to go elsewhere. They're going to go online, and what's going to suffer is ultimately the dog. We're all in a profession to help dogs because we love dogs and all of that, but if we're not helping and supporting neurodivergent people and neurotypical people as well, the dogs aren't going to get that care, and that's what we're in it for, isn't it? So it's
Mm.
interesting that you mentioned there about not speaking up and things, because for me it is, I'm one of these people that just doesn't, even now after doing all of this, if I go to a class and I'm made to feel a different, a certain way, or I won't say it to them because I don't like confrontation, I'll just go back and I'll not do that again. So from a business perspective as well, it makes sense, because we want that repeat custom from our customers. So it makes sense to look after our clients, to look after the dogs, but it's going to make good business sense as well, isn't it? So
Mm.
so yeah, really interesting point there. So we spoke about earlier on in the podcast, you spoke about losing your dog Archie, and that must have been an awful part of your life, really, in a pivotal
Yeah.
moment. So explain a little bit more to our listeners how that influenced your path and forward, and how you decided then to come into this big dog industry, really.
Yeah, so it happened 2 months, almost exactly 2 months after my diagnosis.
Um,
He was still at home in Ireland with the rest of the family, so it was tough to be away from him. But I'd gone home for Easter and I was having a real mental health crisis at the time and I couldn't bring myself to get on the flight back.
um,
So in hindsight, I unknowingly got some extra time with Archie, which was good because I
yeah,
wouldn't otherwise have had that. But when I did go back, I was back for 2 days, and then I got a call from home to say he'd just become suddenly really unwell, and they'd taken him to the vet. They'd found a tumor on his spleen, and there was nothing that could be done. So this was all kind of just coming at me out of nowhere.
yeah,
So it was all a bit, it was a bit of a blur. I booked an emergency flight home that night.
mhm,
And the next morning I was in the vet saying goodbye to him. And it was like, I honestly, I don't know how I survived that time
yeah,
or how I found the strength to actually finish the course because I was
yeah,
just in survival mode for the next month or so.
yeah,
Um, but I also thought, what's the point in any of this? I was going through the motions, hearing
mm,
people say, oh, we need to sort this out for the show. And I was like, it just didn't seem important at all.
yeah,
Um, and I can't really explain it, but the grief just really took over and made me think I have to find some way of honoring Archie and
mm,
work with dogs. I didn't even know how at that point. I just thought, dogs are the most important thing, and I have to do this.
yeah,
Um, and I'd reached out to the Blue Cross at that time as well, who they have a pet loss support service, and they were brilliant.
yeah,
And that's when I started looking into pet loss counseling and how I could find a way to help other people going through the same thing when I was ready to.
yeah,
And also sort of at the same time went back to the idea of dog training, which I'd had the idea when I first adopted Archie, but it was kind of put on the back burner for all
yeah,
sorts of reasons, and COVID happened as well.
mhm,
So yeah, now I'm on this journey of like trying to sort of find a way to balance the two things, and it's all because of him. So I'm
yeah.
sort of doing my thing to honor him now.
Amazing. It's amazing. Like I say, I love how dogs could just come in and change our life. And then what doesn't matter who you speak to in the pet industry, the dog industry, or any animal industry, I suppose, there's always a story. Everyone always has a story in that one animal that sent them on this journey. And I always say that, everything, I'm a believer in everything happens for a reason and stuff. And even though how, tough it is at the time to navigate, you look back and you kind of think, this is why. And people have said to me, with my young dog Quest, I got him as the next agility dog to bring out and do all of these things with. And it turns out that I got him when it was the back end of COVID, and I had anxiety issues because of all of the media and all of that. And then he ended up didn't have the socialization that we would have had if it hadn't have been COVID. So he ended up with anxiety issues that fed off my anxiety issues and stuff. And so agility was fine, in terms of skills. He's got all of that. However, it was all the other stuff. So trying to bring him up to, you see these agility dogs that come out at 18 months that just go and do agility like they've always, they've been born to do it. That wasn't the case for us. And so he kind of took me on this path, and it was a very, very, very hard path sometimes when you think you're going to just go and learn agility skills and go through those motions. But when you're dealing with anxiety, when you're dealing with behavioral challenges, you've got a dog that's scared of people, that's overexcited by the world anyway, the environmental things, other dogs. He wasn't reactive to other dogs or anything. It was more people he was scared of. And then just trying to navigate that, it's you always get, I remember saying that someone said that you don't get the dog you want, you get the dog you need. And if it
Yeah.
wasn't for him, half of the things I've been doing over the last 2 years, both from an agility perspective, but certainly from a neurodivergent perspective, because it was him that kind of made me look at the assistance dog worlds and stuff. Because I always say about him, he's like an assistance dog that's never had any training, because before even I knew that I was feeling in a certain way, he'd be up, jumping on me up, and his face is right in my face, like applying that, I think they call it deep pressure therapy or something. I don't know
Hmm.
the technical terms. I'm not an assistance dog person, but just because I've not learned it. But I'm like, wow, when I've been having conversations with people on the podcast who are assistance dog trainers, I'm like, wow, my dog does that. And he, in a very loose term, he does it, but without any formal training. It's just like he picks up on something. And of course, in the agility world, if I was feeling a certain way, he'd know it and it changes behavior. And that's why that's why I went down the road of agility behavior and all of that. But I just think it's really fascinating that these dogs come into our lives and you don't get the dog you want, you get that dog you need for whatever reason. And they're kind of like being sent to either teach us something or to take us down a different path. And yeah,
Hmm.
I find it fascinating. I'm like, it's almost like, I wonder, I'm not planning on any more dogs just yet, but I'm like, I wonder what the next dog's going to teach me. And I hope it'll be a really easy lesson this time. But
Yeah.
I don't know. But when going back to the grief and the pet loss side of your what you've been learning and stuff, and going through it from a personal experience, obviously losing Archie must have been a really terrible time, and awful for any person, whether they're neurotypical or neurodivergent. But when it comes to neurodivergent people, we often feel things a lot deeper, don't we? And the grief could be more intense, and things like regulation, it affects routines and day-to-day coping. Has that been your experience of it personally? And how, going forward with the work that you're wanting to do through grief loss counselling, do you think that being neurodivergent is going to give you that extra insight and going to help you to help people, both neurodivergent and neurotypical, because of things that only us neurodivergent people experience, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, like that's not to say you have to be neurodivergent to experience
Oh no,
grief
no.
so intensely or, to have that bond with an animal, but it
Yeah.
is definitely something I think that naturally can impact us in those ways, because the relationship that we have with dogs is so different to the one we have with other humans. Like there's no judgment, there's no small talk, there's no like complex social norms or expectations.
Yeah.
They take you as you are, they accept you as you are, which a lot of most people don't, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, so when we lose that kind of connection, it's really profound.
Mhm.
Um, and just in the sense of routine as well, obviously dogs thrive on routine.
Mhm.
So they're like us in that respect.
Yeah.
And I especially found that it tied into my struggle with change. Um, like the absence of someone or something that was just so ever present in every part of your life is extremely
Mm.
dysregulating. And I'm sure that neurotypical people experience this as well, but I've
Yeah.
heard it a lot from neurodivergent people experiencing grief. I would see like flashes of Archie in all the places I expected him to be, which
Yeah.
lasted quite a long time. Just these little visual things. It's like your brain expects to see something there, and
Yeah.
you're kind of convinced that that's what you've seen.
Yeah.
Um, and just even this whole thing of how, to me, home didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like like physically it was the same place, but it
Yeah.
felt like a place I'd never been, which is how my brain sort of experiences these things with change. Like when I was younger, if I'd go on holiday for 2 weeks and come home, it didn't
Yeah.
feel like the same space. It's like I had to readjust to it,
Yeah.
which was always really hard to explain to people. And I
Yeah.
didn't know why that was an experience that I had.
Yeah.
Um, but because I know that these are things I've struggled with, and also from talking to other neurodivergent people who've experienced pet loss in very similar ways, it kind of makes me more determined to be neuroaffirming in my own approach when I start working with clients,
Yeah.
because everyone grieves differently anyway. And
Yeah.
from the coursework that I've done, I've actually explored it a lot with, just the impact on neurodivergent people as well. Um,
Mm.
but everyone has different grieving styles, and not everyone is naturally going to be comfortable exploring their grief through conversation or speech, like in a sort of traditional counseling
Hmm.
environment. So I would like to give people the space to express their emotions whatever way they feel most comfortable, whether it's like writing about their pet or creating things or engaging in particular rituals to kind of honor them, because those are things that have helped me too with my
Yeah.
own grief. So it's interesting to me to explore those different ways that we can talk about our pets without necessarily talking about them in the traditional sense,
Yeah.
just using our creativity or however that comes naturally.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And like you say, it's interesting because like you say, nobody grieves the same way, maybe typical, cycles or things that people experience. However, um to me, that's just like what you've been saying there about, expressing them and talking about things in a different sense, maybe through creativity, maybe something like the things that spring up to me is like art or music or those kind of things. I'm sure there's
Mm.
many different ways. I'm not qualified in those areas. But like I say, because and it's that getting that awareness out, isn't it? That we can grieve in whatever way that we are feeling that we need to grieve, I suppose. Like it's that breaking those barriers down in case of, just a bit like dog training. We do this, you come to a class and we do it this way because that's the way it's always done and it suits usually neurotypical brains because that's who it's made up for. A bit like grief and pet loss. It's not my area of expertise, but from what you're saying there, it's like this is the traditional way, to go to counselling or you talk about it. But for many people, whether you're a typical or neurodivergent, that might not be suitable and not be the way that they can express themselves. So it's really interesting, and I'll be definitely following your journey and seeing what you do with that because I think it's going to open it up to so many people. And like you say, with neurodivergence, there's all different levels of neurodivergence, and no neurodivergent person is like the next one. We're all individual, and people, who might struggle with communication anyway, in the
Yeah.
day-to-day life, but to struggle with it in such um troubling or hard times when they're going through this grief is going to be even more impacted, isn't it? So opening it up to say, your feelings are still valid, we are still here for you, you are still seen, safe and supported. That's one of my taglines, that we're here for you in a way that you need us to be here for you rather than a way that we say you should grieve, so to speak.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really,
absolutely.
really interesting. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with that. But obviously, it's a very sensitive topic, so looking forward might not be the right phrase. But you get you get what I'm
I
saying.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So switching the lens a little bit to dog training, you said that Archie sparked your interest in dog training and learning more about dogs. And definitely, like I say, dogs lead us down this path. I blame Milo for everything. It's completely his fault. So what was it about your relationship with Archie that sparked that interest in working with dogs and going down that training route?
Um, yeah, when I tell people how Archie turned up, they always say it was meant to be. Like it's just what we were saying before, you get the dog you
Yeah.
need.
Yeah.
And like we'd been talking about adopting a dog, and then literally within days of making that decision,
Mm.
Archie turned up in the garden as a stray during a storm.
Oh wow.
And what was interesting was we'd heard about this border collie puppy, and we'd inquired about him, and they were like, oh, he's actually shown problems with aggression towards his litter mates and things, and someone else had already expressed an interest, so it wasn't meant to be. And
Mhm.
then a few days later, Archie, also a border collie and a lot older, turns up almost as if to be like, you need an older dog in your life.
Yeah.
You don't need a puppy, you need me.
Amazing.
Um, so it was really clear that he had not had the best life. He was in a bad way. I don't think he'd ever been in a proper home before.
Mhm.
We suspect he came from an environment where there was dog fighting going on because he had a lot of scars, and he
Right.
was he was quite afraid of other dogs at the time.
Oh.
He had a lot of teeth taken out because he just had poor nutrition. And yeah, just but he was the most gentle dog, like very unlike a border collie in a way. I mean, very intelligent and
Mm.
sensitive, but like not this stereotypical image of, the crazy collie that can't switch off. Like he was so chilled, and
Oh,
he just had this effect on people. Like I would bring him out somewhere and he would make eye contact with a stranger and they would be straight over saying, that dog has the most magical eyes. Like it just, he seemed to
amazing.
have this effect on everybody he met.
Oh,
Um, but when he came to live with us, it was just before lockdown, and I just became obsessed with helping him feel safe. And that was like the most important thing to me. So I was watching dog training videos, I was researching and reading so much stuff because that's what my neurodivergent brain does. And
yep.
obviously, I realize now what was going on there.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh, this is so fascinating. Like, imagine doing this as a career. But I didn't
Yeah.
take it any further at the time beyond helping Archie because
Yeah.
lockdown and different things came into play.
Yeah.
But every time he progressed or reached a milestone, it was like the biggest source of pride. He actually made a couple of dog friends, which was huge for him.
Amazing.
It was just, it was so rewarding. It took him 7 months to actually realize he was allowed to get into his bed. But when
Oh,
he did, it was just, it was like, this is what it's all about. And just watching
oh,
him blossom it, because I'd never had, like, I'd always loved dogs and I had a dog when I was younger, but I'd never had a rescue dog before or one with the kind of challenges that Archie had. So
yeah.
it just gave me this sense of purpose that I
Yeah.
kind of I wanted to recapture later on.
Yeah, amazing. That's such a lovely story, and I think that's it. I think is that dogs just have this really, really unique way of not only coming into our lives when we need them, giving us this purpose, but also from a neurodivergent perspective, just accepting us for who we are. And like I say
Yeah.
that, we've spent a lifetime of being judged or even calling ourselves weird, like I was speaking about it earlier. And I think for me, that's kind of like for the work that I do is kind of like to kind of give back to dogs, even though it's, by educating dog professionals and things and helping people understand the human side of what's going on because dogs feed off our emotions, they can smell our emotions. And if we, it doesn't make any sense to me that if we, we put all of this emphasis on, rightly so, on understanding the dog's needs, emotions, and all of that, but we forget about sometimes a handler that's coming in with them and how that massively impacts through the work I do. I see it on a daily basis in agility, but even in general everyday life, especially with reactive dogs. We always talk about the what travels down the lead and that kind of stuff. But for me, it's kind of like the work that I do is kind of a way of me kind of giving back to dogs because dogs have given me so much, and whether that's my own dogs or my clients' dogs, but just that acceptance and that mutual understanding of each other. I think it's like you say, it's those magical moments where they feel safe, and you kind of like it's like, oh, amazing. I've understood you, and now you understand that I'm trying to help you. That I've got you basically. Like I say, when he was just realizing that he could get into his bed, it's like you can't. If you could just bottle up that feeling and sell it, we'd be millionaires, wouldn't we?
Absolutely. And it's just, it's interesting because, like, I didn't know a lot about border collies at the time, but, you often hear, like, oh, they're not suitable for first-time dog owners, which I wasn't anyway. But, and they'll say, like, if you're an anxious person, don't get a border collie. They can be quite highly strung. But I feel like Archie made me less anxious, and which in
Yeah,
turn made him less anxious. So
yeah.
it just worked out very well.
Yeah, I get that. I get that completely with Quest. We're the same. It's kind of that mutual understanding, isn't it? I've got you. We're both in
Yeah.
this together. And yeah, you kind of end up creating that ultimately that fantastic relationship because you both know that you're both kind of in it together and you've got each other kind of thing. Amazing. So when it comes to managing everything, like navigating everything you're doing, you're busy with your courses and everyday life and stuff. So neurodivergent people like me included can tend to be quite bad at setting boundaries and looking after our own self-care and that kind of thing. So for me, understanding that need for routines and structures and understanding burnout and the fact that I need to structure in my diary like rest days and things like that is really, really super important. And it's something that we often feel bad for doing because it's because people can't see our kind of struggles in terms of if you had a physical, like a broken arm or something, you could see that the person's arm was broken and then you wouldn't expect them to carry a load of shopping with that arm. But
Mm.
for us, I think it's hard because it can't be seen. It's just like what we're feeling and experiencing at the time.
Yeah.
and justifying those kind of boundaries and that self-care has been really, really difficult for me. So from your point of view, how have you found managing your kind of work personal lives, making sure that you've got those boundaries in place? Have you found that difficult, or now you know what you know about being autistic, balancing that kind of learning qualifications, all of that? Have you found that difficult at all, or has it been pretty easy?
It hasn't been quite as difficult as I expected because I think just what I've learned this year generally is that I can't continue neglecting my needs the way I have in the past. Like I obviously, when I was freelance, I was in a situation where I was working with clients, and although that was a different industry, I know how easy it is to fall back on, people pleasing and trying to do
Yeah.
too many things at once. So boundaries are a big thing for me now. Like I won't pretend that I've got it all mastered because it is incredibly difficult,
Mhm.
but I'm again. So I think thinking a bit ahead to what I'm planning to do, focusing on quality over quantity is going to be so important. Like I'd
Mhm.
rather have a small group of people who trust me to work with them than have more clients than I can realistically handle.
Yeah.
Which also means
Oh, let's see if that's going to come back. So sorry about that little technical glitch we had. I think the storm that Sarah's experiencing in Northern Ireland got the better of us for a minute there. So just going back, repeating that question for our listeners, we were talking there about um, finding navigating our own kind of boundaries and things, weren't they? You was just explaining about how you found that.
yeah, I've kind of forgotten what I actually said up to that point,
It's
but
okay. It doesn't matter if you
yeah,
repeat yourself, it's fine.
yeah, it was just about I was just talking about how it's essential to kind of keep your needs in mind because
Yeah.
obviously I've had experience of what can happen when you neglect those needs
Mhm.
in terms of, not saying yes to everything and avoiding burnout.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think the point I was trying to make before the storm intervened was that um, I'm trying to trust that being authentic in the work that I do will attract the right kinds of people.
Yeah.
Um, and you can't obviously please everybody. There will probably be people who um, may not want to work with you, but
Mhm.
it will hope. I think authenticity will hopefully attract the kinds of people who will, and that will hopefully include other neurodivergent people.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think that's it. And I think the more from what I've found, and I always say this with my business coaching head on to my clients, it's that we struggle as neurodivergent people, myself included, to just be us because we have had to put this mask on and be who the world wants us to be rather than be ourselves. However, since my diagnosis and the more I have been being me, especially let's put it into an agility context, is there's a lot of agility trainers out there, and for me there's a lot that I love the sport of agility. It's been really good for growing my confidence and growing my dog's confidence. However, I don't always like the way that agility is taught and the way that it's set up, but I felt for a long time that I had to do it how other trainers had to do it. And I spent a lot of time doing it how other trainers did it because that's how I thought that's how it had to be done. But what that led me to is burnout. And that led me to, I didn't know all of this back then because I didn't know I was neurodivergent. And the more that I've tweaked things in the last couple of years and the more that I've just been authentically me, you kind of get that say those clients that naturally navigate towards you. It's like someone once told me it was like a magnet. You're like a magnet, and you will attract the ones that are right for you, but you'll also repel other ones, and that's absolutely fine. And I think as neurodivergent people, we can be worried too repel people because we see it as a
Yeah.
personal failure to us, and it's like it's not. That as soon as I did the mindset work for myself to say actually it's not us, we can't serve everybody anyway, we haven't got the capacity, but having those clients that, maybe a smaller group of clients, or ones that, you can mold your business to be exactly what you want your business to be. It doesn't have to be, this big thing that everybody else sees. And what I do as a business coach as well is I spend a lot of time with clients just saying the marketing and all of the stuff you see out there is aimed at neurotypical people, neurotypical brains, and that's fine, but it doesn't always work like that for neurodivergent people, because we're not made that way. And that's absolutely fine as well. You can mold a business and you can do different things from different pieces. That's why my logo is built up of jigsaw pieces, I know, which is quite controversial in the neurodivergent world anyway. However, I don't know if people can see the logo behind me. From an agility perspective, I put, before I knew I was neurodivergent, I had the logo pieces in my agility because it's made up of so many little different pieces. It isn't just skills. It's about all of your jigsaw, all about the dog's jigsaw pieces, and that together needs to be its own jigsaw to create whatever it is you're wanting to create, whether that's a well-behaved dog, or whether that's an agility dog, or whether that's a business, helping dog professionals, or whatever it might be. It's all about all of the little pieces, and that's why my logo is what it is, because we're made to think we have to do things a certain way, and if we don't, that we're in the wrong, and we have to adjust something that we're doing, or we're meant to work 9 to 5, or some people work, some people do one-to-ones, or some people do group things, and it's not always. We don't have to do that. We can mold our business just to do us, and the right clients will find us. And all of the other ones, it's kind of a mindset shift, but it's about letting them be repelled and us being okay with repelling them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and when it comes to accommodations as well, the thing that a lot of people forget is they can benefit everybody, neurodivergent
Mm.
and neurotypical.
Yeah,
Whereas if you're denying people accommodations when they need them, you're obviously negatively impacting those people. But like doing things that will benefit neurodivergent people, that'll have a knock-on effect for everybody. Like
yeah.
there's no downside to it.
Exactly, yeah, exactly that. And I saw a really good reel, I think it was on social media, about it wasn't about neurodivergence, it was about disabilities, and about how, something as simple, I can't remember the whole reel, but about when they put ramps in to help wheelchair users, it also helps people like mothers with prams and stuff, and
Yeah.
maybe older people with walking aids or whatever it might be. So that's exactly. I'm sure there's tons more of those kind of things, but it does benefit everybody, doesn't it? The more accommodations we put in place, and the more open we are to just talking about different things, and that kind of brings me on to my next subject of like, why do you think it is that neurodivergence isn't being neurodivergent, and the accommodations and all that isn't widely talked about, not just in the dog industry, but in general?
Yeah, it's a hard one to say, but it's definitely, I think it's important to highlight in for many of the same reasons that it's important in any other industry.
Mm.
I think we focus so much on challenges, and of course that's really important because there are challenges to being neurodivergent. Like it's very, very difficult for a lot of people. But we kind of forget as well that neurodivergent people have so much to offer. Like we bring a different way of looking at the world, different solutions that other people may not have necessarily thought of. And I
Mm.
think some of those characteristics are actually really well suited to the dog world. Like for example, I know that I'm particularly good at pattern spotting and picking up on small details or clues in a dog's body language, and um, that you can't necessarily teach that. I mean, you can obviously teach people to um, you can kind of train yourself to get better at
Yeah, look
knowing what
out
to
for
look
those
out
things.
for. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think just having that, like I'm obviously still quite new to the dog world.
Mm.
But I know that I have a feeling that that's going to benefit me going forward.
Yeah.
And since I started my dog training course, I personally have been impressed with how accepting other people have been of my neurodivergence. Like my fellow students have been really good, and my tutor as well.
Mm.
Like I had a conversation early on. We were kind of discussing our journeys, like how we ended up on this path. And
Mm.
I briefly mentioned my autism diagnosis. And then at the end of the day, my tutor approached me and said, I just wanted to check in with you about that. If there's anything that you need me to adjust or anything I can help with, just let me know. It's not a problem. And I was like, wow, this is really a new experience for me.
Amazing.
And it may not be the same for everybody, but that's been my experience so far.
Yeah.
Like there was a conversation about, we all know dogs will bark in training classes, and it was kind of like, oh, you when you've been doing this for a while, you just kind of filter it out. And I happened to mention later on that I personally struggle to filter that kind of thing out, and I'm at
Yeah.
risk of, sensory overload. But that was
Yeah.
just instantly accepted, and the response was, well, if you need to step out or take a break, absolutely no problem. So it was just good to open up that conversation, and people don't necessarily like they don't necessarily intend to sound, like they're not being inclusive. It's just
Yeah.
it mightn't have occurred to them that some people would
Yeah.
experience that. So it's just that's why I think it's really important to just open up the conversation, because it might make someone go, "Oh, I hadn't thought about that before. Let's try doing it this way."
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Definitely, and that's it. And I think it is just like you say, bringing that awareness and making, like you say, opening up those conversations and making people more aware of what it's like for the human side of things, whether that's the dog
yeah,
professional themselves or whether that's the clients in class, and being more flexible with things. I know, as neurodivergent people, we do like certain things to be like routines and things, but however, the flexibility in changing things up if needed to be, and for some people, that flexibility will be needed a lot more than other people who need routines. And I think the key is to kind of understand your clients. We get to you to understand our dogs in the training class, and we understand what their
yeah,
quirks are and what their behavior is, but understand the other end of the lead as well. And without being intrusive. And one of the things I do as a neurodivergent dog coach is help dog trainers to create like even simple things like on their intake forms, like looking at new non-intrusive ways of finding out as much as you can about people if they're comfortable to share it, but not asking them directly, because there's nothing worse than being like, not that anybody would ask personal details in front of a group, but an example of this is if I'm in a group agility class. I've been training agility for quite some time now. I've got 2 grade 7 dogs. I do agility behavior. I know quite a bit about it. I don't know everything because I don't think anybody can know everything. But if I'm in a training class now, even with Quest, my youngest dog, and I'm asked a question, my mind will just go blank. I'll be like, I don't know. I will know, but I don't feel comfortable in that situation because I don't, because of RSD, and I don't want to be perceived as if and if my answer is different to what because with agility there's loads of different ways to handle something or whatever. I always think my answer is the lesser answer. So if I'm asked a question, it's a lot safer for me just to say I don't know, even though, and to me, the logical side of my brain goes, that's ridiculous. They're going to think you're an absolutely rubbish trainer because you've just said you don't know. But at that moment in time, that's all my brain gives out. That's all my mouth will say. I'll just be, oh, I don't know, because it's safer in that situation. So yeah,
yeah.
understanding that that's what your clients can go through. It doesn't matter who they are or how knowledgeable they are or how long they've had dogs, or do you know what I mean? It's just understanding how things can be for people, that confrontation, amongst other things. Like I say, it could be a noise sensitivity, or it could be even like we've spoke about on the podcast before with previous guests, that a big thing for me is the textures of food, the textures and smells of food, and some people don't, like the textures, or even dog slob, or even wet dog hair and wet dog toys and things.
Yeah.
And it's stuff that as dog trainers, we just, it's just accepted. And if you don't accept that, it's like, oh, you're a bit weird, or, what's wrong with you? And it's made a bit of a joke of, which then makes you feel even worse. So I think it is the more of us that speak about these things and the more it's, deemed, acceptable, the easier it is for everybody, because even neurotypicals might not like, sweaty cheese. Do you know what I mean? That's the first thing that came to
Yeah.
my head, and like you say, it makes things better for everybody just to be open and say this could be a problem, but we've got lots of different solutions. And I think that's where being flexible comes in as well.
Yeah, even like physical things. I've always struggled with like coordination and things. I mean, it's not confirmed that I have dyspraxia, but I suspect I probably do. And
Mm.
even just things that a lot of people wouldn't think of, like certain treat pouches, and they can be quite fiddly, and the clips,
Yeah,
and it's like I can't get this on or
yeah,
off. And it can be very embarrassing when you're taking time over that kind of thing. So
yeah,
just to sort of not make any assumptions about what people may or may not be able to do, and just
yeah.
I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's going back again to that thing of just because it's not a physical disability, it's not a lesser disability. Like you say, we wouldn't ask somebody in a wheelchair to suddenly do something that we know that they couldn't do. So, excuse me, asking somebody who's neurodivergent, putting them in that situation, I think we just need to be more aware of all of the things. And like I say, hopefully by speaking about it and the work that I do with the neurodivergent dog coach, it's helping people understand that just because they can't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. And being kind and compassionate, just like we are with the dogs, to the human end of the lead as well. So I think that's really
Yeah.
important, isn't it? So, when it comes to understanding our own neurodivergence and our past challenges, we've touched on a little bit of it there. Have you found that since you've had your diagnosis, you've had some kind of like light bulb moments? I've had many, and like we were speaking about before I started recording about how suddenly I'll just be, you get your diagnosis and then you kind of think that's the answer. But actually, somebody said to me, "Oh no, don't make any rash decisions because it's going to take a lot of time to sink in." And I was like, What do you mean? Of course it won't." Kind of like I wasn't rude or anything, but I was like, "Oh, that's a bit strange thing to say." And even now, 2 or so years down the line, I'm like, I think little light bulb moments are going off, and I'm like, oh, that kind of makes sense. And I have to sit a minute and process it, or do a little bit more research, or just navigate the emotions that it brings up. So, have you found that yourself that over time, or how have you found understanding your own neurodivergence has impacted you really?
Yeah, there's just so many. Like I'm having constant light bulb moments in,
Mm.
especially thinking back to childhood and going, oh, that's why I did that. So there's just
Yeah.
so many. In relation to dogs, it's got me thinking about my own sort of relationship with dogs. Like I got my first dog when I was 11,
Mhm.
and I had to really talk my parents round, like, please, can I have a dog, please? And I remember I was thinking about that time a lot recently and just how obsessed I became with learning everything I could
Yeah.
about dogs, deep diving into books about all the different breeds, and
Yeah.
even just like I was quite arty as a kid as well. So I went through a phase of drawing dogs all the time.
Oh,
And it's only now that I think definitely that's as a result of being neurodivergent that I
yeah.
was just hyper focused on dogs.
Yeah.
It was just all consuming.
Yeah.
And even now, like if I go to like a family gathering or a party and someone has a dog, I'll be that person that spends the whole night playing with the dog or hanging
Yeah.
out with them. And I was at something recently and somebody said to me, every time I look at you, you're on the floor with the dogs.
Yeah.
But I like being that person.
Yeah.
And I recently well, not physically went to a webinar, signed up
Yeah.
for a webinar about border collies and how their brains work. And there was a point in that webinar where they said that the breed, there's certain characteristics they have as a breed that tend to overlap with neurodivergent humans, such
Yeah.
as like noise sensitivity. And it just made me think, I love that that was mentioned. I hadn't heard anyone actually say that before.
Yeah.
But it made me think about, my own relationship with Archie and just how, without realizing I was neurodivergent, just how many things we had in common in that
Yeah.
sort of way. So yeah, that's definitely been a light bulb moment for me.
Amazing. And it is that kind of thing we spoke about before about how we just get that natural affinity for them, don't you? You kind of like, if
Yeah.
you understand them, they understand you. And it's kind of like you say, what we were talking about earlier about picking up on as neurodivergent people, we often pick up on patterns and see things that others don't see. And so that's a real benefit when it comes to dog behavior, dog training, and all that kind of thing. But for me, from an agility context, it's kind of had the opposite effect because I go to agility competitions and I see all the little increments of behavior and I see how the dogs are really feeling. And I'm like, ooh, you know, if only because the human, you know, I always talk about in agility, we have the human jigsaw, we have the dog jigsaw, and with the human jigsaw, you get a lot of the ego, you get a lot of the chasing results, the performance,
Yeah.
even the embarrassment of the dog's doing something that they didn't expect in the ring. So they start labeling the dog, oh, what are you doing that for? You do it fine in training, and all of this sort of stuff comes out. So I'm like, and I'm just sitting there like cringing, or the dog that's leaving the start line, and the handler's putting more pressure on them to go back, and you know, so their handler unwittingly, unknowingly, is being aversive by either raising their tone or raising their posture and body language. So the
Yeah.
dog's, you know, physically worried, but in actual fact, the dog is leaving the start line because the handler's, you know, led out a little bit too much, and they're worried and they want to be closer to their human where they feel safe. But then in the, you know, the flip side of that is actually what they're getting. The reality is they're getting punished because they're going back and being put in that scary place, which then is impacting their relationship. So it's really good in one respect. And for me, that's why I've kind of shifted away from that agility thing, because it's so hard to break down the barriers of what the human wants and what the human ego wants in terms of what's actually right for the dog's welfare and stuff. So yeah, so it is a massive help in terms of behavior and sorting out behavior if the handler and the owner wants to understand the behavior, if that makes sense. So yeah, it is, and that's one of the things. Neurodivergence is fantastic, isn't it? It brings a lot of strengths, and it brings a lot of, you know, things that we can do extremely well. But there is that flip side to it as well. Of sometimes I wish I didn't see these things and I didn't understand these things like I did, because I always say jokes, well, half jokes sometimes, that it'd be nice just to have a normal brain, and neuro, you know, where you can't use the term normal because, you know, of different things, but a neurotypical brain,
Yeah.
because sometimes just the ability to switch it off or to see things differently. So like I say, is that having that, just because we can't see a disability and people think, oh, it's, you know, it's not really a disability, and there's all that negative media, it kind of can be a massive hindrance as well, especially when we're so compassionate about, you know, about dogs and about their care. I've definitely found that from that side of things as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking ahead, when in terms of what the work you want to do, whether that's through training, whether that's through grief support, or whatever it is you go on to do, what kind of things do you hope to do in the future? Are you looking at doing a dog training? Do you want to be specifically a dog trainer, or are you going to do mainly grief counselling, or don't you know yet? Is it kind of all exciting and you're just navigating what's next?
I definitely see training being, yeah, the main thing, and
Yeah,
hopefully using my grief counseling certificate to sort of to help maybe training clients that I have, if you know
yeah,
they've gone through that experience, and just to sort of raise more awareness of it
yeah,
in the public sphere as well. Like I can see myself really kind of being very vocal about the benefits dogs can have for autistic people and neurodivergent people in general.
yeah,
And I'd love to like be able to offer inclusive training classes for autistic adults or young people, maybe
yeah.
partnering with like an autism charity or something to offer that. And I've heard a few people express interest in that. So that's definitely something that I see myself doing.
Amazing.
And then in terms of pet loss support, I'm really interested in running like peer support groups so people can kind of talk about what comes up in a sort of informal space. Because I think sometimes maybe one to one might uh, bring some added pressure for certain people. So just
Yeah,
to be able to offer that, and maybe some particularly for neurodivergent people as well, to sort of explore those themes and what comes up.
yeah,
So yeah, lots of things I'm interested in, and on a personal level, I'd like to get more into scent work as well, learning about that, and I because I think that would be a lot of fun for me as well
amazing.
as for the
Yeah,
dog.
that's
Yeah,
it. I think as neurodivergent people as well, we go down rabbit holes and we're like, oh, this is nice. And that's definitely what I did when I was learning. I learned all of the courses, spent way too much money than, you know, than I needed
yeah,
to. But I think it's on neurodivergent brain going, oh, we need to know that, and, you know, all of that as well. But definitely what I picked up on there, what would be really interesting about kind of linking the grief support work to the training work you do is like, people, as if you're training them and their dogs, they get to know you and you get to know their dogs. And I
Yeah.
think when we lose a pet, number one, it's not massively aware, there's not a massive awareness about that you can have grief counselling for a pet. um but number two, if there is those services out there, it's usually with somebody that doesn't know us or doesn't know our pet. So I think for a neurodivergent individual, if they've been training with you and you've built up that connection and that understanding, you not only know them, but you know their pet as well. So you can relate to
Yeah.
a little bit about not only what they're, you can help them with the grief, but also you can relate to what they're saying as well, brother. They'll feel a lot more comfortable. I know I certainly would, than if they go to somebody that didn't know their pet. They might think, oh, do they think I'm overreacting, etc., etc. As a neurodivergent people, you have all of that you have all of that come up as well, don't you? So that'll be definitely an interesting avenue to go down as well. And if only more dog trainers would look into that as well. Do you know what I mean? Because that isn't an unfortunate part of being involved with people and their dogs, isn't there? There's going to come a time when they don't come to classes anymore for those reasons. But yeah, it's been fantastic to speak to you on the podcast, and I've learned loads, and it's been I'm sure our listeners have really resonated with a lot of what you have said. So always on the podcast, what we do to finish off with is we have 5 quick fire round questions just to get to know you a little bit more. So are you ready?
Yep,
So
ready.
number one, the dead difficult. Number one, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Coffee. The last two have
Yeah.
been tea, so coffee's fighting back. So, what's one thing, like, so either a piece of equipment, a tool, or app that you can't live without in your daily life?
Oh, a weighted blanket. Because
Oh, yeah,
I love the pressure. I've kind of discovered that this year that I need that. So it really helps me regulate. Yeah.
amazing. I mean, dogs are very good weighted like
Oh, yeah, they are.
blankets,
Yeah.
aren't they, as well? Amazing. So, what's one hobby or interest that people might not expect you to have?
Um, I love reading historical books. I love history. Yeah.
Amazing. So, are you a morning person or a night owl?
A night owl, definitely.
Amazing. I say I'm the opposite. I'm a morning person. My husband's a night owl, and sometimes he'll be like, in the morning, I'm like up and ready to go and do things, and he's like half asleep. Then at night, I'm fast
Mm,
asleep on the sofa, and he's raring to go. So, you know,
yeah.
we have to kind of navigate that, but it's fine. And the last one, what's your favorite way to recharge after a busy day?
Definitely cuddling with a dog. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Which I've been missing at the moment, but that's
Oh,
definitely it.
amazing. Not for much longer though, hey?
Not for much longer, no. I'm in the process of adopting another border collie from Dogs
Amazing.
Trust. Yeah, she's very different from Archie, but I think that that's good. You have to take each dog as an individual, and they all bring something
Yeah.
different to your
And
life.
amazing. I'm thinking as well, once you've got her and she's settled in and stuff, it'd be interesting to come back and do a podcast episode about how you found her compared to how you found
Yeah,
Archie and stuff. So yeah, if you're up
absolutely.
for
Yeah,
that, definitely will be interesting. So,
definitely. I think she'll help me with my training as well. She'll be good to
amazing.
practice on.
Oh, amazing. And if people are listening and wondering, wanting to get in touch with you or wanting to learn a little bit more about you, what's the best way for them to like follow what you do or to learn about when your services are up and running?
Well, I'm currently documenting kind of the journey of learning this field. So it will probably change as I get up and running. Like I'll probably be operating under a different name, but at the moment I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and it's under Neurodivergent training.
Amazing. And we can put all of the links under the
Yeah,
podcast as well, so people can just click on and find you really easily. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's been, like I say, it's been fantastic to speak to you, and I think that lots of people will resonate with what you're saying, and you'll have helped a lot of people. So if you are new to the podcast, make sure you are following and or hitting subscribe so you do not miss a future episode. So thank you again to Sarah. So it's goodbye from Sarah and goodbye from me. When the button wants to press, there we go.